Hey, thanks for checking out this podcast we call Mountain Movers. I'm John Zwart, a marketing director, and I'm with my co-host Brett Bowes, who is the president of WKW Associates, one of the leading manufacturer rep companies in the massive telecom and broadband industry. This podcast is all about talking with leaders who are considered mountain movers in their particular industry. Every leader must earn the right to be followed. Most people will not follow or take risks for just anyone. Most people will not heed the advice of someone they don't trust or respect. For example, early on, Walt Disney was laughed at for his vision of Disney World and desire to make an animated movie. So why is that? Perhaps it's for the same reasons you and I wouldn't take advice from an inexperienced young person about our finances, and would only take advice from someone who has the accolades and run of success of someone in that industry. However, if Walt Disney was alive today and wanted to hold a conference on the topic of entertainment, we know that he wouldn't be laughed at, and that event would be sold out in minutes because people want to hear from the man who had the vision, insight, experience, and abilities that come with a leader like Mr. Disney. So on this pilot episode, we talk about a few things. Why a listener should give their time to listen to this podcast. We talk about the reasons why we started this podcast now in what appears to be an already saturated market of podcasts. And we also discuss what is ultimately behind the name Mountain Movers. So if you like what you've heard so far, continue to listen, and you know the deal. Please like and subscribe to support this podcast of bringing really valuable content from really good leaders to people who want to better themselves. Well, we are here. The podcast room is complete, and we're excited to start this. And when we had this thought about 4 or 5 months ago, we wanted to make sure that when we would do this, that it would be something that's sustainable, right? Something that if we started, it's not just going to last 2 or 3 episodes. We just wanted to make sure that what we did, it was done with excellence. So we did some research on equipment and just some research on podcasts in general, and made a nice space here with a backdrop. And so we are looking forward to what the coming months and hopefully years brings as far as the content here on this Mountain Movers podcast. So I guess I just want to maybe start this way. Oftentimes I am late to trends, especially when it comes to TV shows. I don't often pioneer the first episodes or season or first 2 seasons. I'm usually watching much later. It's just the way that I am.
With one exception.
What's that?
With Welcome to Wrexham. We were on it before it launched. And while I doubt Rob and Ryan will be listening to our podcast, at least this episode anyway, truly inspired by that. So we were trendsetters with Welcome to Wrexham.
Yes. Yeah, we have definitely spread the word and take maybe an ounce of credit for their viewership.
An ounce.
Globally.
Yes. But it inspired us to start our own soccer club. So
yes, it did. It was very inspiring, very interesting watch. Looking forward to season 2. But having said that, we are post-pandemic, and a lot of podcasts were started during the pandemic as just an outlet for people to talk about things, to work. It was just a way to work and get your mind on something else. So, Brett, I did a little bit of research, and I found that there's about 3.5 million active podcasts. Much more than that if you include the inactive ones. But there is about 70 million episodes for people to listen to.
So you're saying we're not unique.
Yeah, no, that includes, non-active and active. But why start a podcast now?
So really a great question. And while I'm definitely also not a trendsetter typically, or at least riding the leading edge of trends. It took me binge watching 2 or 3 seasons of Yellowstone to get caught up, and some other shows that I won't mention because, well, let's just say they were my wife's favorites. No, but seriously, I feel like, yeah, with these statistics, obviously we're not on the leading edge of starting a podcast. What I don't know is that I can't verify that we're not on the leading edge of starting a podcast in the industry where we really make our living, which is in the telecommunications and broadband industry. We've been, WKW Associates is the company who John and I work for, and we're a manufacturer's rep in the telecommunication industry. We basically try to bring products to customers. We help promote, help get products approved, and ultimately go out and sell and support those products to many end users, large telcos and broadband providers across the country. So I didn't really think that we may not be quite as far behind as we thought, because within that industry, and I'd have to do some research, but just from what I've seen, I don't know that there are a ton of podcasts that would have that kind of a vibe to it where we focus in on that industry. And yet at the same time, the cool part about this podcast is that we don't have to just stick within that industry. We're really looking to not only bring great interviews, great content within the broadband industry, but also within other connections that we have.
So there are definitely a few out there. There are a few broadband podcasts. Some, like I said, are inactive, or some are very, their audience, I would think, would be very, very small as far as who would tune into that.
So specific.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how does what you're talking about fit into the company's mission statement?
So we reworked our mission statement not too long ago. And I actually made sure I brought it up in front of me here, but we talk about a few of our core values. And while I'm not going to sit and read the mission statement, some of the key words that are in our mission statement that we have in bold are integrity, connections, out-educate, family, celebrate, and community. The out-educate is an important one for us. We believe that bringing education with product to the customer gives us an opportunity to outsell our competition. It's not a new thought. It's one that ultimately I picked up from the book Rework, which was written by Jason Fried and David Heinemeier Hansen. Those two guys started a company called Basecamp, and I was handed the book by a friend, and I absolutely have just read it multiple times. I've torn into different chapters. I've really applied it to who we are as a company, and I've even had the opportunity to use it in an entrepreneurship class that I teach at Faith Christian Academy. So it's become a staple in my backpack. I keep it with me at all times, and really the one chapter of don't outspend but outteach your customer, and don't outspend your competition, but rather out-educate is really the one that kind of got me going. So to answer your question, one of the things we thought we could do with this podcast would really be just to out-educate and continue to educate our customers by bringing leaders of our industry into the podcast for interviews, and at this point, that's the direction we're headed.
And the connections that we have are not going to necessarily land us an interview with Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, right? I mean, that's just probably not going to happen.
At least not in the first season.
Yeah, but there are a ton of small companies out there, and there are some really good leaders that can that have a lot of value to share, and maybe are looking for a platform where people just like us, we're looking for something challenging, something to make us think, to help us think something fresh. And a lot of leaders do fail, I think, because they are married to, they're married to methods and programs, not to probably what originally got them to start a company or take over a company, and that is whatever their purpose or their mission was. And I was watching a documentary on Netflix called The Last Blockbuster, and that's pretty ironic to watch something about the king of home entertainment in the late 80s, all through the 90s, no doubt, and into the early 2000s, on something that at one point Blockbuster thought was a joke. Right? On a platform that we all, I'm sure, have subscriptions to. And as I was watching that documentary, there's a lot of things that stuck out to me. But Reed Hastings is the guy who, one of the guys that started Netflix. And on a Friday night, just like millions of other people, I'm sure that very day, went in.
Like this Friday night.
Yes.
But no Blockbusters are left open.
No, there's not. And, we would go into the Blockbuster, we'd smell the popcorn popping, we'd see the blue shirts and the khaki pants, right? Probably some of that nostalgia is coming back.
Hopefully that one release that you're hoping for to watch that night is actually still in stock and it's not just an empty container on the shelf.
Well, he rented that movie, watched it, and didn't return it, and misplaced it or something. And then by the time he actually returned it, he found out he had quite a large return fee, which we are all, which we all remember. And he paid the fee because he was quite able to pay it because he had recently sold a company for like $500 million. So Reed Hastings wasn't just some average Joe on the sidewalk that was just like, let me, how can we do this better? He was a businessman. But as he drove home, he got this idea, there's got to be a better way for people to watch a movie at home. And so that is really the thought that brought about the mail-in DVD, or the mailing of the DVDs into the home. Being late to trends, often myself, I did not take part in the DVD mailing program.
I did not either. Only the CD mail-in program, which I think was Capitol Music or BMG.
Yeah, BMG, I think.
Yeah.
Yep.
That one, I felt like I was a trendsetter on that one, but my parents had to bail me out many times.
That was a nice one because you could get a bunch of CDs for free as long as you just bought like 2 or 3.
Right. At a very, very high markup.
Yes. Well, that mail-in DVD program was something that was new, it was different, and people started liking that, the convenience of it. And I think what actually grabbed my attention for the first time with the Netflix program was the subscription that they offered, where you could pay $15, $20 a month, and you could get an unlimited amount of DVDs to watch. And that was something that intrigued me. So that program started doing quite well. That company started doing quite well. And they, after I think 3 years, in 2000, they had a meeting with Blockbuster, and they offered Blockbuster an opportunity to buy them for $50 million. And Blockbuster just laughed them out of the room, because in Blockbuster's kingdom that they were living in, right, there was nobody that could touch what they were doing. They were definitely the kings of home entertainment. And they had 9,000 stores, 80,000 employees, and they were worth over $5 billion in the late 90s. That's amazing. So here's this little tiny company that's making some success, and they go in and they laugh at them and they think it's cute, and they say no. And
if only they could rewind the clocks.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. And then Blockbuster, with some poor decisions, they started doing some really silly things to try to combat a little bit of what they were losing to Netflix. And the .com era was really booming, and obviously Netflix capitalized on that movement, but Blockbuster didn't, because they were clouded by the success that they had and failed to think afresh, right?
Right.
So they only saw themselves, I think, in the late 90s as a company that rented DVDs and VHS tapes, and a little bit of gaming was there at the end. But I think they just saw themselves as a company that rented those items, rather than what I think their original mission was to be the leader in home entertainment.
Right.
And they lost that along the way. And that's what Netflix continues to do today. They started that way with birthing the idea of there's got to be a better way for people to watch entertainment in their home. And ultimately convenience won out. Just the idea, I don't have to go out. Everything I can shop online now. They were ahead of that.
Right.
And very interesting to see how quickly Blockbuster crumbled, because they lost sight and they were married to their method, right? They were
not their mission.
That's right.
Yeah. And the interesting part too is that I think along the way, as we go through episodes of interviews and conversation, really, that's really what this is. Not interview might not be the right way to put it, but we just go through conversations with people who we'll bring on. You're going to find, we'll hear stories about companies who have lost their way. We're not necessarily going to be interviewing entrepreneurs who started their own business. We're going to be really going after industry leaders, and you will hear stories of companies who have lost their way. The interesting thing is that some of the coolest stories you'll hear is how they regained their way by going back to their core mission, remembering what got them there in the first place, and stop chasing these unicorn, rainbows. Go after what truly got you there, what your mission was in the beginning. Go back and find that, and then you ultimately reinvent yourself in that core mission.
So there are so many businesses, like you said, and leaders that have failed, and leaders that have refound their way and taken over, and maybe brought a fresh perspective. And one of the things that we want to do here on Mountain Movers, and we'll get to that name here in just a minute, is to show the listeners, or have the listeners hear and be challenged with what people are doing out there, how that maybe that one idea that they hear can help change something that they're doing. And it's not always easy when you're in it and you're just in the day-to-day and you have these blinders on. Sometimes you do need a book. You do need a podcast. You do need people in your life that aren't just yes people, right? People that can challenge you with new things. And I have a feeling that there were a lot of yes people making pretty good checks at Blockbuster.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of pain and trial and error on the Netflix side. But look at them now.
Right.
Right.
A truly lean model without much overhead. That's probably not a fair statement. Not the brick and mortar overhead that a Blockbuster had with 9,000 stores, and really captured the trend of the world, right? I mean, everything is online. Everything is at your fingertips. Our kids are growing up with life at their fingertips, and we had to go to a store to get the movie that we hope was available that night. It's just very different. Limitations are significantly less than they were when we were kids.
I was earlier today walking through the area here where we meet, and I saw one of the trucks, and I could see, they have these big red brake pads, and I got to thinking about what we're going to be talking about today, and just when you're on a topic, a lot of times you interpret things, right now through those lenses, right?
Yep.
So I saw those brake pads, and how did that fit in with Blockbuster and their failure, right? Blockbuster thought towards the end that they were in the movie rental business, right?
Yep.
But they weren't. They were in the home entertainment business, and they lost that. With brake pads, right? Are these brake pad manufacturers, do they think they're in the brake pad industry? If they do, at some point, probably in the future, right, they're going to get overpassed by a new idea.
Yep. Yeah. Regenerative braking.
Exactly.
Right, in electric vehicles.
Yep.
I can't tell you. I'm sure the life of brake pads is significantly different. So I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, are you in the business of stopping vehicles? Or are you in the business of brake pads?
Exactly. And yes, those are only maybe on electric, but
for now,
there's an engineer out there that's working on it, I'm sure.
Right.
So what's the meaning behind the name Mountain Movers?
Mountain Movers. So when we decided it was time to actually put a podcast in play, which I tasked John with about 4 or 5 months ago, and he quickly sprung into action because this is, I think, really in part of his sweet spot of what he enjoys doing. Him and his dad just absolutely crushed it putting this studio together and going out and building tables and creating or purchasing equipment for us and really making it more than just two guys sitting in front of a camera and hoping that the audio is good. So it was time to pick a name, and living and breathing in the broadband industry, in the telephone industry, which is where I grew up. My dad worked for the phone company for 29 years, all through my childhood as a technician, a lineman, and a splicer, and so I've known telephone. I've grown up with it, and thought, well, hey, that's the industry we live and breathe and work in, and should we just call it like the broadband podcast or the telecom podcast? And we thought we have to do a little bit better than that. We got to be a little catchier.
Yeah, that's too boring.
And it's also very narrow, right? I mean, At the end of the day, we would never really be able to expand beyond our industry and bring in guests and people to talk to outside of our industry. So the name Mountain Mover, after much deliberation, we both just kind of felt like it was clean and crisp and clear, and ultimately it showed our purpose. It showed our mission, which is really to talk with people who are industry leaders, talk with people whose decisions and focus on mission truly has allowed them to move mountains, be it in the industry that they're in, or even personally. And I think you can look at the mountain moving as a couple of different ways. I think one would be that you literally have people who are just willing to run through a mountain, right? You can move it because you are just going to push until it's out of your way. Or you find people who can navigate where you can move through a mountain. They've just found a really good way to navigate in between the mountains and ultimately be a mover in that respect. So we thought that the idea of a mountain mover is somebody who's a disruptive innovator, right? Somebody who is thinking outside of the norm, shifting the paradigm. Use the different terms and cliches that you want to, but ultimately, I love that term, disruptive innovator. Somebody who is forward thinking and they are willing to shake it up, right? They're willing to go against the norm, go against the grain, because that's at the time what the industry needs. And the first time I had ever heard that term was a friend of mine. His name's Tim Spino, and he worked for Milwaukee Tool for a while, and then moved on to start his own company, which was, I thought, incredibly innovative. Instead of trade shows, he was putting together these events where he was bringing executives together to have these high-level speed dating type meetings to try to make things happen in a 30-minute window rather than walking around a trade show and hoping that you run into the right person. So he had talked about that at one of his events, and it just stuck. I love that term, and I truly think that those are the types of people we're going for, and why not go with the Mountain Mover name at that point?
There's something just interesting about people who are in a leadership position or have been and have experienced failures and success. And to hear those stories are always very captivating. There's a reason why people are buying tickets to go hear from leaders like Jack Ma or Elon Musk or just to name some of the big ones. But there's a reason that podcasts are successful. They're interesting. It gives people a platform to share their failures and their successes. And there are a lot of people out there that want to do better. They want to be better, with their own small company that they have maybe out of their garage. They may just need that one little thing, like that we were talking about earlier, that can just challenge them to think something fresh.
Yeah, I think people are willing to pay to go to these conferences, to go to these inspirational leaders or speakers, and or just hear successful people talk, because everybody just wants that. They want to know what the secret sauce is, right? And while I think a lot of people would throw a number of different ideas at what they believe the secret sauce is, is it hard work? Is it luck? Is it being in the right place at the right time? Is it, what's the quote go? Opportunity or luck happens when opportunity meets preparedness, right? There's secret sauce everywhere, but to actually hear it from the mouth of the person who experienced that failure, fought through that failure, because hey, every once in a while, there's that one who just gets it all right the first time. But most of the success stories you hear, especially the overnight success stories, probably took a few decades to become an overnight success. And along the way, I'm sure there were many, many speed bumps and setbacks.
So, Brett, as we wrap it up, what, in your perspective and in your desire, what is the ultimate goal then with Mountain Movers?
The ultimate goal really is to give our listeners an opportunity to really meet the people who have experienced success in industry, people who have thought outside of the box, right? Who have really come up with different ideas. And again, I think one of the keys is that we're not just going to be talking to people who own their own business. We're going to be talking to people who've had an opportunity to help run businesses, help start new market segments. And you just never know what little caveat, what golden nugget that you're going to grab from one person who may be sitting in the chair next to us. And ultimately, we just want to share their stories with our listeners and certainly continue to help make connections in our industry as well.
A book like Rework, right? You're not reading that just for pleasure only, right? You're reading that to get something out of it, right? And same thing, if you're out there and you're looking for podcasts, there's a reason. It might just be to fill up time on a plane or on a car ride. But if I'm doing it, I want to hear something that's interesting, and I want to be able to take something away. And so, we're committed to having this lineup of really great people on here, people that are going to bring those types of things for listeners, for myself, for yourself, to come away from listening and be better ultimately because of it.
And hopefully be entertained as well.
Yeah.
Maybe laugh a little bit and be entertained.
Yeah, get some characters on here.
Yeah, we have those. So we don't know exactly what the lineup is going to look like. We have a number of possible ideas, but we're excited for what the first official conversation will look like when we bring that first guest on very soon.
Well, Brett, thanks again for kicking this off with me and co-hosting. Many more to come. And to you, our listeners, please come on back, like, subscribe, and we have more interesting and challenging podcasts coming your way.